Oh. Hello. For coming in from Peasant side, I'm Night Sky Prince. If you're coming in from my side, this is Final Fantasy Peasant. I assume that if you know one of us, you probably know the other one. That's just generally how this works. Yeah, for the most part, we're kind of a small community of creators at this point. Pez, I'll tell you how I personally discovered your videos and your content.
Yeah,
man, it was actually it was before I actually started YouTubing myself. Maybe like a year before I started YouTubing myself, and I started watching you because of your Final Fantasy XV videos, your theory videos, and I remember when Final Fantasy XV.
What times, God, so nostalgic, so
God.
long ago.
Yeah, good times, right? And I remember
really good times.
I remember.
I don't want to say it, but I'm just gonna say it, that the times before 15. They were almost as good, if not better, than when it actually arrived. I'm gonna say.
Yeah, like
I
that
loved it. I love not knowing.
Yeah, that time like leading up to the game. Oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah, I had too many like saucy headcanons loaded by the time 15 came out. It was almost impossible for Square Enix to like match 10 years worth of headcanon.
Right. And
they gave it a good push, and it had heart. It had heart.
It did. I was replaying it, and some of the things about it, they aged really well, or they like going back to it. I realized that there was a little bit more something to this than I remembered, and then other things, I was like, oh no,
it's full flat.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It kind of had the lens peeled off of this is just the latest greatest Final Fantasy game, and playing it as an actual game. There were some things I loved more, and some things I was just like, man, how did we even let them get away with that? Yeah, and so
yeah. For me, I've just not been tempted to go back to 15 mechanically for the gameplay. Like, I'll jump in 7 Remake, and I love just stringing some combos together, but 15 I haven't had that urge. If I revisit anything in 15, it's just picking specific story segments. Just, you guys are the best. I'll get my injection of feels.
Right.
That's all I need from Noctis and the bros. But yeah, man, other than that, did you finally see Dawn of the Future, the book? Did you
No,
the meat and juice that was in there?
I haven't actually like sat down and. Have you sat down and read it? I have not sat down and read it.
I read the early translations, which were like some chapters. I've not actually read the book.
Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did.
Yeah, I read the translations, and I was like, oh, this breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I can't read the book. This is the ending that would have just resolved everything. Arden's character, Noctis, Luna. It would have been everything.
Yeah,
Aranea, she has such a huge role. Like Idolus's grandchild.
Right.
Idolus would have had a purpose.
Right.
So many missed shots. Crazy.
And the thing of it is that when I was replaying it, I noticed that they had like a lot of great payoff moments. Like I noticed that the cinematic scenes were almost underrated in a way, because the heavy hitting moments like the Titan fight, Leviathan fight, and the scenes in between them, and the structure of it, the events were a lot better themselves than I remember them being. And it's just like, man, if only the proper build up was if only the build up in the context to those scenes was there in the way that it should have been. Like, it's like this would have been so
absolutely. It blows my mind to think we had this whole thing with Arden, and like Somnus wasn't until months after the game come out. That's such a huge setup to the villains' motivations. And then I think even with Ifrit, when they released like a Star Scourge model later.
Yeah.
It's like, who changes the model of the final boss so that it reveals some huge aspect of its story? I can't believe it.
Yeah. Some of
such small things.
I mean, and that's some of the things that I was noticing while playing it. Do you remember how in like the original game, like after you kill Ifrit, like Shiva says something, and like fans were like, yeah, she literally says it in like plain English now.
Yeah, they were a couple, and that was a whole thing.
Right, because that wasn't initially there. They actually went back and added in that cutscene.
Yeah,
where
so many scenes like that.
Yeah, where they were like, okay, well, Shiva and Ifrit are like lovers now. And I'm like, was that always the intention, or did you actually go back and like retcon that?
Yeah, or just the amount of time they spent on things like the Assassin's Creed DLC or Terror Battle. I love Terror Battle, and I'm saying I love it. What was the chick's name in it?
Sarah.
What was the chick's name?
Sarah was her name.
Yeah, I ship Noctis and Sarah harder than
100%.
Noctis and Luna.
100%. And
I ship Nyx and Luna harder than I ship Noctis and Luna.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to get a romance in 16?
Oh my gosh, a romance. Well, hold on, my camera's out. Okay, there we go.
Can't really see which characters.
Oh my gosh. You know,
I do. I'm a hopeless romantic.
I do not
want to feel again, NSP.
I do. I actually do not think we will get a romance in Final Fantasy XVI. The reason is because 14's not heavy on romance at all. And there are so many obvious ships that they could do. I think like, well, I don't want to spoil 14, but there was a recent romance in Shadowbringers with the Eden Reigns, but that's probably the most that we've gotten in like the whole game. So basically, four full Final Fantasy games worth of story. And
I know what romance you're talking about now.
Oh yeah,
I get which one you're talking about. Adults. I thought you were.
yeah. So it's
talking about Reen and Gaia.
Yeah. Well, that's they're supposed to be like a thing, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there's Reen and Gaia, but other than that, there's no like.
Just before coming on this stream, I had a thought of a kind of relationship I would like for 16 and I could see happening, because we got Joshua, Clive Rossfield or Shield. I still prefer calling him Shield.
Yeah.
I love his name as Shield, but yeah, he was supposed to be the dominant, and it looks like Joshua either gets messed up by Ifrit as Phoenix, or there's two that come out, and the little chick is called Jill Warwick. I love the idea of her being Shiva, and that Clive has to go out. He's no longer a guard, a protector, that's his role, of these dominants. Now he's been asked to kill, and him and Jill Warwick, they team up. So him and like mini Shiva going out to get Ifrit, and there's like a Joel and Ellie type relationship between them.
Yeah.
Older Clive and this younger Shiva chick. That would be great.
That would be interesting. Great. And then we also have to wonder how much time is going to happen in the time skip, because my current theory with 16 is that Joshua is not actually dead. I don't think he's actually going to die.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
There's a phoenix in the game.
Yeah.
A phoenix.
Yeah, and I think that they are going to make Clive. I think Clive, for all intents and purposes, is going to believe that Joshua is dead. But I don't think Joshua is actually going to be dead. And then what's going on with Jill is even more interesting. By the way, I love how they just have just like regular English names. It's just so Joshua, Jill. It's just so weird for a Final Fantasy game to just have like very regular plain names like that. But I really wonder, because they were talking about capturing Shiva's dominant. So we know that Jill, at the very least, does not, assuming that she is Shiva's dominant. I cannot be convinced that she's not.
Yeah, you see like an older woman with silver hair that looks kind of similar to what that girl would look like, older.
Right, because she reminds me of Lady Azale.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Is that how you say it? When you said Azale, that disarmed me. I have such a backwards way of pronouncing her name. I'm like, Isale. It makes no sense. It's definitely not how, but I've come to call her that. I'm sticking to it. Azale makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I always thought it was Azale, at least. Correct me if I'm wrong.
But yeah, well, when it comes to like 16's direction, especially, I really feel this is going to be a completely different Final Fantasy. I really could see us being with just Clive. I really could see a lack of teammates. Now that the combat is going sort of DMC5 style, I don't know, I really get a vibe that this could be like a single God of War, Last of Us, that kind of format, like traveling with your main companion. But what I think will carry it off, because those were all things that kind of said if a Final Fantasy didn't have these, I would not love to play it. And that was like team members, the importance of like going through every characters. Like Square Enix have taken painstaking care to always keep that format. And after 15, to me, it was only after the Bro DLCs came out that I was like, this has now finally felt like a Final Fantasy. It was years later, but I don't know if they can pull it off where, because in that trailer, I'm sure you were the same, but you were just getting like mad FF references just flying at you, like hints of things.
Of course,
I think
the
when
14
people, like,
team,
it flashes out of its...
Yeah,
but loads of people, even just like the eye, just when it flashed out, people like 14?
Yeah.
14? And then you got like Ifrit and like Phoenix position away, but it's like Alexandria Castle in 9, you've got like 12 in there. So if they can keep like this mix of nostalgic vibes, I think they could pull it off.
Right.
Even with it being completely different to everything I valued as FF.
So how would you feel if combat did not have party members?
I don't know. Like I said, I feel like with 15, it was only after that it started feeling like an FF to me. I don't know if similar to Yuffie's DLC, again, if we do like team up with the occasional character and whether they're like an NPC. I kind of do get a little bit frustrated with NPC characters in all FFs. I think FSM Remake sort of handled the NPC aspects the best, but they're still so annoying. They never do.
Yeah,
what you want them to do.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed Remake's combat quite a lot, and I feel like I really enjoyed the combat in that game. I thought it was just fantastic. I love how the game demands you to switch between your party members, and it actually switches fast enough so that there is a flow in between between all the party members, and actually being able to control them and be able to use all their move sets and skill sets in such a way.
Type Zero is the only game I've ever platinumed twice in a row, like 600 hours back to back, and it's because it had that quick switch functionality. It was so sleek. I think we are going to get that with Clive. It looks like he goes into all these different like summon stance. So I feel like it could feel like quick switch, like switching and getting like very unique and really expressive. That's what I loved about DMC5. I only got about 5 hours in, but that combat system is so expressive. You clearly see every spell effect, and it's all set up in a really cool, stylized way. I'm really hyped for the combat system in this game. Yeah.
One way I think that they could make no party members work is something similar to like Lightning Returns, or even or maybe like Final Fantasy XIV more specifically, where you just have like this warrior of light who's switching between all these different jobs, and you can level all these different jobs and play as them and switch between different jobs on the fly. And I think if they do go the no party member route, it'll be Clive switching between various jobs, and I would actually be pretty cool with that, because it would sort of be like the 14 energy coming into 16, which I would very much appreciate.
Yeah, there was a shot of Clive in combat where it had what looked like a peasant guard. It was just like a soldier standing next to him. It looked like he was facing towards the monster. So I don't know if he has these unimportant NPC guards come along. I don't know. I love there just to be multiple team members, more for the emotional story side of things than mechanically. Because Final Fantasy is always about more than just one character. To me, it's always a ragtag group of people from every corner of the game's logic, all coming together.
Right. I think we'll have party members.
Crazy stuff.
And in fact, I think we've only seen the first like 5 hours of the game, if I'm going to be honest with you. In fact, it may even be less than that. I think we've only seen maybe like the first like 2 or 3 hours. I think they're really just going to put you in that opening section. I think it'll be about as long as like Roxas in like Kingdom Hearts 2. where it'll be like 3 to 4 hours, and then that's the opening of the game, and then like for 35 other hours they're gonna have you in like this open world and doing all this other stuff. But those first 3 to 4 hours are gonna be the whole setup that we've seen in that trailer.
Yeah, and there's going to be big time jumps. The whole thing with old and young Clive, there's going to be time jumps all up and down. 15 started it. I think 16 is going to go next level with it.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm looking forward to, especially that I feel like that 14 sort of started. There's this very... I think that Creative Business Unit 3 comes up with very mature Final Fantasy stories. And I talk about this a lot. But, and I don't mean mature for those of you who aren't familiar with like where 14 is. I don't mean mature. Like, yeah, I don't mean, does not mean like blood or fan service or anything like that. It's more rooted in like, I deeply appreciate this more now as an adult than I would.
It has something you can resonate with at an older age.
Yeah, that you just could not, Yeah,
I can't believe Yoshi P just writing that little thing filled me with so much happiness, because I did a M-rated video, I think about a year ago, sort of posing to the community why I think M-rated is next on the agenda. And so many people love the idea, some people were against, but Yoshi P gets it. We're old.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy fans are old.
Yeah.
We want to feel things that resonate now.
Yeah. I look at my like age analytics on YouTube. And like for the most part, it's all people in like their late 20s to like maybe like mid 40s, right?
Yeah, and when I started, it was firmly between like the 20 and like 26 section. It's shifting to 30.
Yeah, exactly. And then if I make like a Nier or like a Persona video, then that's when that like 18 to like 25 range starts to actually become significant. So Final Fantasy fans are older. And they are at that point where they're just ready for that mature, visceral experience where there's nothing held back. I do think that it is cool that there's actual blood in 16, and they made it a point, like a very, very big point, to show that yes, we're doing blood this time, and it's gruesome.
Blood is
chop that dude's head off. And squirted blood all over Joshua's face, and Joshua's just like...
a toddler, traumatized. I gotta be honest, dude, when that happened in the trailer, it went completely over my head. And people were like, Pez, did you not say... I'm so oblivious to blood in game. I'm like so normalized to it. I don't really care if it's in there or not. Like, so many people were so angry at 7 Remake. Now, I've legitimately had some people say, the thing that killed 7 Remake for them, about 3 people now, was when Barrett got stabbed through the middle and there was no blood. I'm like, what? Are you serious?
So
that's what killed it for you.
I'm 50-50 on that, because first of all, for me, that was just sort of like, why did we stab him in the first place?
Yeah. And why do we stab him?
And then
why do we stab him in the first place?
Yeah. And then the second, I mean, I understand that they really did not want to cross the age rating with that title. I think that's as they were making that transition to M-rated, but at the time, for that title and other titles, Yoshinori Kitase is the producer. I don't know if it's him who is the one who insists on the teen rating, or if it's Square Enix is higher up saying, no, our brand is more family friendly than that, so we're not going to do an M-rated title. I sort of now lean more toward it maybe being Kitase saying, I think that, because as producer of the series, he's one of the people making these business calls now.
The calls,
right? In terms of like the business structure. Yeah, he's a great man. So I don't know if he was the one making that call. I'm glad that Yoshida, if I am interpreting that correctly, that he would make a call to go ahead and just say, you know what? Final Fantasy fans are old. You're senior citizens, man. You want?
He more or less said that. He was more or less like, you've seen the rough edge of reality,
right?
And it's time to bring that in.
Right, exactly.
So what year, guys? What year is everyone thinking? I was like 21, hopeful early 22. When do you think 16's coming, dude?
2022.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So we know, according to
22.
Jason Schreier, in his sources, he tends to be pretty reliable about this stuff, that the game has been in development for 4 years, which means that roughly after, and that was a few months ago, so roughly after Final Fantasy XV was finished, they were like,
that's
okay,
crazy to think, isn't it? That's crazy to think.
Super crazy to think. And so basically what happened is that the team that did Heavensward, as soon as Heavensward came out, they were like, okay, now that you worked on Heavensward, you're gonna work on the next mainline title. Isn't that
is that what they did? It was a lot of the Heavensward lot.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah.
Anyways, maybe that's why Stormblood was a bit poopier.
I suppose so.
A little bit.
I suppose so.
Brill.
I still really enjoyed Storm. I'm a big Stormblood fan, actually. No, I understand when people didn't like it as much as like
because your expectations are just up here. Like 14 gets to such a pacing. It's like, wow, if my mind's not being blown every 2 minutes, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
If my mind's not getting blown, they're building up to something terrible and great.
Yeah. But
I love the pace of the 14, man.
Yeah. So Stormblood had like a lot of really great moments. I know that you are also a very big fan of Yotsuyu, just like me. So.
Oh yeah. Yes. I love that character. She made me think.
Yeah. She's something that the series I felt like has not done in such a long time, where I felt like I was really thinking deeply on the morality of like certain decisions, which I feel like I have not done in the mainline series since, because I don't think anything about fucking Final Fantasy XIII was morally great.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I hit the Yotsuyu bit just as the Whack and Phoenix Joker movie was coming out.
Yeah.
And after getting conned by both of those, I was like, every time a story would come on the news about someone doing something terrible, I was like, we've done this. We as a collective society have created this monster. It's not his fault. It's all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, so I got a question for you. Going back to Final Fantasy XV, what do you think is the biggest lesson for Square Enix moving forward that they should have learned from Final Fantasy XV? There's a lot of lessons, but what do you think are the biggest lessons?
For me, the biggest one is round off the edges of your plot points, of your core plot elements. Make sure you round those edges off. I feel like they got 90% of the way to creating something awesome in terms of the world setup. Like we had Solheim and all these ancient ruins that were amazing, like references, like the civilization that came before. Tied into EOS, and I know they had more with EOS and what it ended up being. By the end, they were like, oh, it's Arden's girlfriend. And it was like, she wasn't Arden's girlfriend. There was clearly this goddess with a wing, and they had all the cryptic text that my theorizing brain just like pounced on, the rotted sky, and it felt like it was going to have an F&C sort of richness to it. And they got so close. And all you had to do was like, what's the name of the photography guy in FF15? The chunky guy with the camera.
Prompto? Wait, oh no, the other guy. I was like, oh, yeah, that guy who has like the meteor. I was like, what? No, you're talking about the guy with like the meteor shirt on, right? Yeah.
Like these pointless characters who I didn't care about, like turn him into an archaeologist and have us take us through Solheim's ruin or something and teach us more about this world's lore. I felt so disappointed them teeing up this exciting universe that they'd cut away from F&C because they were going to bring something even juicier to it, and then they just didn't follow through.
Yeah.
So always follow through with your plot points, see what the important ones are. Like, again, why did we not have that finale in Dawn of the Future? Why did we have Terror Battle in Assassin's Creed after that? I don't know. So I think there's a lot of like project organizing, and I'd like to think that nothing that really happened in 15 would happen again because it was so unique. The problems, like trying to create an engine that would take down the West and converting it from verses and Nomura's thinking to Tabata's thinking. Gives me chills, especially because I love Tabata and him taking the brunt the way he did. Still feel it, man.
So what I always say is that no two Final Fantasy games are bad for the same reason.
Yeah, I like that.
They're never bad for the same reason. Square Enix listens. They listen. They're like, okay, the game is bad because of this, this, and this, and then they go back to the drawing board and they come up with something new that's also bad. But it's not bad. It's not the other reasons that the other thing was bad.
But what the bad usually is with Square, I feel like they've got themselves into such a headspace of how are the West doing their games? How are they like rinsing it for money? No, the repeat DLC and never-ending content format. And I kind of feel like 15, which did hugely well. I mean, it sold like crazy and made Square Enix big bank. I feel like Square Enix could easily get into the head that it made that much because of the format that they did. And that's why I kind of always knew with FF7 we'd be getting another sort of roadmap of content. But I generally think 15 did well in spite of that formula. And that I genuinely believe if FF16 does a straight Final Fantasy story, great characters, all the dedication to those plot elements, that will sell itself, Square. Like, that's why we buy your games. That's why we love you. I don't like to say like stick into your niche, because I very much encourage devs to try new things and be bold and daring. I can't believe anyone still has like sticking points with FF. For me now, whenever I see anything in FF, it's like with the punches. I'm not surprised. I do not resent change in Final Fantasy anymore.
Yeah.
And if you are one of those person who still do, drop that boulder, drop it, because it's never coming off. It's only going to change more from here.
So I mean, I have two. I agree with that, and then I also feel like that when they had like a more fixed formula with like 1 through 10, I also feel like they were able to have a formula and then improve upon that formula routinely. I am sort of in the middle ground now, where I almost feel like they do need to try new things, but they also need to sort of stick to some things and just work on refining them.
Certain concepts that were evolving in a promising way.
Exactly. Like take Remake's combat system, for example, right? I think that's damn near close, minus a couple of flaws that will probably be fixed as that series goes on. But I think that that's a very, very, very good base for modernizing the ATB system. And I genuinely think they need to keep that system and just keep building on it.
Yeah.
And keep iterating on that.
I kind of agree. I think if they got a bit of that, I feel like what they dropped too early was... I think it was 10-2. I think 10-2 was starting to nail it. Like turn-based, that wasn't in uniformed lines. You had your characters sort of stood in sort of free-moving positions. You had job classes. It looked good. It felt good. I felt like they could have pushed a bit further with that, which I suppose is to me what Persona is now. Like, Persona is fulfilling all my turn-based needs, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that's probably my favorite turn-based system actually. I'm playing Yakuza 7 now. I just started, and that is also probably up there, but I would say the system from 3 through 5, particularly where 5 left off, is just so fucking good. Someone here in the chat actually has a good question that I wanted, because they adding on to what I was saying earlier. FPS Gaming ask, what could FF16 learn from Final Fantasy XIV? Is there anything you think they should avoid based on any nitpicks from 14?
For me personally, what got me most hyped when I saw Yoshi P and the 14 team working on this was that we was going to get cutscene density and some story density. Like they obviously in 14, they've learned how to really bulk out the story without overdoing it, just keeping it simple, even if that is sometimes just text. I don't know, text would be really jarring in obviously a modern game, but just doing minimalist sort of scenes where we can have plenty of dialogue between the characters. I almost like my Final Fantasies to feel like a movie experience. That's why I love 13. It was just like you play a little 4 or 5 minute section and then you're into some juicy story, 4 or 5 minute section story, and they just kept laying it on, and that's personally what I prefer and what I hope 16 gets from 14.
Yeah.
Keeping that little bit of freedom, sucking you into some crazy. Freedom, crazy.
So, right. I
keep going until I cry or lose my mind.
I don't really, for me personally, I don't really have any major gripes with 14. Anything that I want to see that's not in 14 but could be in 16, I think is purely out of the fact that 14 is an MMO and those types of things just aren't possible within 14. Yeah. Although they make a lot of things possible. I lost my shit when I first got to play as Alphino in like 4.4, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, I cannot believe an MMO let me switch characters for story purposes. I was like, what? Has this ever been done in any
when I held the movements of a Stinian in my hand, the nut was real.
It was so good. It was so good. Yeah. So, in terms of my personal lessons for Square to learn, from Final Fantasy 15, and I think all of the main actually, it's not even just the Final Fantasy problem. It's what I call the Square Enix writing problem.
Yeah. Is it plot amnesia?
No, well, kind of, but it's more like some of the cliches that Square has come to rely on. Which ones? That are just sort of. I think that the concept or the idea of fate has sort of become kind of
Kingdom Hearts bullshit.
Yeah, and that's sort of the overlap between the two, is that they have this idea of fighting fate, and that's you could argue that's in every RPG to some extent of that concept, but the way they play it up is very much killing fate incarnate. And it was that was the same conflict with Orphan. You could argue that 15 was about accepting fate, which I think can actually be compelling depending on the way you tell it. Accepting fate is a little bit more compelling than, say, fighting fate, because accepting fate is something we have to come to terms with in real life, which actually brings me to my next point about the Square Enix writing problem, is that they don't. In a lot of the modern titles, I feel like they have removed a lot of the human elements to storytelling. It's less about the human experience in a fantasy world, which I think that 14 does magnificently. Final Fantasy XIV is a story about people. And they're just people who are living in a Final Fantasy world, and they act like people, and they say things like people, and the whole world, even though there's these fantastical things happening, at the end of the day, the story really just comes back to love for family, friends, homeland, and things like that. And that's the real focus. And the fantasy elements are just there to bring out the deeper human aspects. Right. It's right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think they've lost that in not just the modern FF series, but in Kingdom Hearts as well too.
Yeah. I think I do love it when they keep certain elements on the more subtle side, rather than straight up having like Tifa come out and be like, "Knee with a capital D." I feel like there's a way to give that to the player, like deducing, we're battling with like the concepts of free will and free choice and like moving on from stagnated memories. I feel like that could have all been there while still remaining subtle. And this is often the trap, I think, when I'm doing some remake theory vids that a lot of people think I'm suggesting, is that I talk about these crazy out there concepts and what could be coming up in part 2 and part 3. And people are like, that sounds way too high in the sky for what I would like Final Fantasy VII to be. And for me, it's not that when I'm saying these things, I want them to be in the forefront of the game. What I've always loved about Final Fantasy is you can play it on one level, and then if you want to go deeper and deeper and deeper, you can just grab your shovel and dig for days and find stuff. And I went digging for days in FF15. I didn't find much at the bottom of the hole. I think that's what takes out the longevity. I think if Square Enix want to make a game that has longevity, I'll do it by setting up multiplayer and random derpy games and
like mobile games and
pinball, mobile games.
Yeah.
Just add layers of depth, because that's arguably why those golden age FFs have lasted so long. To this day, I'm still learning stuff about 8. 8 just has so many layers to it that, I really hope they get that in there with 16.
Yeah, 8 actually is surprisingly deep. I've been watching Resident Arc's like podcast series. I don't know if you've seen it. They did like a really fantastic like podcast series, and they're like, it's like a deep dive into like Final Fantasy VIII. It's like 10 hours long. I was like, oh god, that's a lot there. Yeah, and Final Fantasy games have that tradition of being deep enough with their stories that you can talk about them generally for years and years to come. I mean, we would not be doing the things that we do now. We would not have channels basically if these stories did not have some sort of deeper philosophical impact on people discussing them, because otherwise no matter how many Final Fantasy games there are, you run out of stuff to talk about at some point. And with this series, it feels like there is always something to talk about, and that's I always think they've missed a trick if you haven't got a lot of Westerners saying that the game's convoluted.
Like, to me, that's a good sign, and I never want to hear from Square Enix again. Like they said with 15, that was the day my heart sunk. I was like, oh damn, this ain't going the right way. When they said we want to make a game for first FF timers, which I didn't mind, but simplistically presented, a simple story, simplistically presented, and I like convoluted.
So I think there is a way to do both, to not make a story convoluted and to still make it really compelling. And I felt they kind of went that way with 13 a little bit in terms of so much of the world lore, and the deeper, more confusing stuff was confined to data logs, which I think was a way of trying to keep the more complex stuff sort of away from the main flow of the narrative, and people really didn't like that. I get it, who wants to sit in a data log, and that's where, to me, you've got to be using the quests and the NPCs. There should never in a Final Fantasy be any reason to do a fetch quest. Collect some toads. Undo some traps. What are you doing? It's a whole world. Get the NPCs to that's what Square Enix to learn, how to do proper quests. Side quests have been a problem, an ongoing problem for Square in the modern age too. I don't think 7R is an exception there. 15 definitely was not. 13 was by far the worst of all of them in terms of how they handled it, because it was only hunts. But they miss out on a lot of world building, and this is one thing that I love about Final Fantasy XIV is the raids, right? And how much lore the raids actually add. And I know that you can't do something quite like those. Expressed imagery as well. Just like being able to do stuff like the Coil of Bahamut, where you're able to like go through that and find all that exposition about like 1.0 stuff. That stuff. I've still not fully gone through Coil. Twintania just. Twintania is in Coil of Bahamut, right? Yeah. Am I getting that correct? I don't think I've fully done the Coil. I haven't done Twintania yet, so I can't really answer.
Is Twintania in the Coil?
Or the twinning, or is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's.
Yeah, we're getting our asses kicked.
Yeah,
for me. Yeah, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say I unsynced the Coil. Everyone's like, do it for the lore, and so we did it for. Okay.
I will never unsync. My pride will not allow.
Okay, Twintania. Okay, I'm confusing Twintania with the twinning. Okay, that's what it was. Anyway, the lore in the raids and stuff. Like I did the one for the weapons, and then we got Diamond Weapon coming up in 5.5. And I guess for me, like the biggest thing in 16, or what I would hope for more of that we gotten in 14, is doing those side quests. And then there is like all this like world building that you find within like the side quests and the raids, and a lot of it I think is like really I don't want to say easy to do, because nothing with creating a game to do, but it's a lot more straightforward to do than say the thing that like 15 and 7R have in common is the finding cats quest. I think every that's like the first like quest for like every our JRPG nowadays, and it's usually the worst. And I think that a lot of other games now are starting to have their quests not necessarily matter for the main story, but it contains like a lot of world building in it that you just would not get if you didn't do it. And that's what I think should be like the primary driving force for doing side quests is world building.
Yeah, I don't mind the occasional derpy McDerpington of a quest being there, but in any side questing, it's always so magical if you hit a side quest. It's kind of what blew my mind with in 14. There's some content that are entire arcs of story that are truly mind-blowing, that had I not had a raid of people to tell me to go and pick up that quest, I probably would have missed. But if you're doing a side quest and you go, oh my god, how is this not a part of the mainline story? And you're doing something right. And all you got to do is throw a couple of those in, because then it motivates you to go and do all the derp as well, because you feel like, in one of these side quests is going to be a gem. And I feel like within hour 15, I was like, none of these side quests are going to be gems.
Yeah.
Like, oh, these aren't going to be juicy.
And that's sort of the thing too, right? With Final Fantasy 15, there were so many opportunities to actually insert bits of lore. There was this one quest in particular about and I think Eyepatch Wolf mentioned this in his video on Final Fantasy 15 that I found like really hilarious, about the I can't remember which royal arm it was, but it's the one where you fight that dragon and like the underground thing.
Oh yeah, the underground. Yeah.
And he was talking about like how like the model was basically like purchased like off an asset store.
Was it?
Yeah. You can actually.
And it made no sense being down there either.
Yeah, and the story made no sense because it looked like the royal arm was like stolen from the thing, right? And then you get down there, and it's like it's the dragon that had the royal arm, but it's like, how did the dragon fit inside of the thing?
Elevator.
And then
because that bit was supposed to be showing like ancient Solheim, how basically the Empire now creating Magitech, they were experimenting with necromancy back in Solheim, and was part of the reason why Ifrit condemned them in the end.
Yeah,
they were doing all this dark stuff, and you had that because the other dragon we had in one of the dungeons, it was Quetzalcoatl, which is literally the Aztec god of fertility, and it was in that underground chamber, like done in water, and it was like, whoa, this is like a rebirthing room where they're practicing necromancy and playing with life and trying to find everlasting life. No one knows that because it just wasn't properly shown. It had all the right beats.
Yeah,
they were just way too cryptic.
Yeah,
way too cryptic, and then they were just lost their mind. Sometimes I still remember to this day. You know the 15 cover art we had. What was his name? Yoshi.
Wait,
who was the NA guy? North America guy, for Square Enix, and he was so excited he did an E3 for about an hour. Kishimoto.
Matt Kishimoto. Yeah, Matt Kishimoto.
Like explaining how they'd been allowed to do this cover tile, and it was an exciting thing. And he told us the background where it's set is a really important location, and all the kings.
I remember that. All the
kings were done up like FF7 weapons. You had Sapphire, you had freaking Ruby. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And then afterwards, he's like, oh no, it's because Diamond Weapons in Kingsglaive. We just wanted to troll fans.
Oh. Hello. Okay.
I facepalmed the keyboard too hard.
Oh my god. No, that's.
But yeah, like, what's that about, Matt? What are you doing? You're just trying to troll fans.
Oh.
Just silly stuff like that. And I think with 16, one thing I want them to learn from 15: don't show us everything in the trailer. We saw everything. We saw Shiva, Titan, Bahamut, Leviathan. we had seen all the best sections of 15 before 15 came out. And that's what was hard to swallow, really.
Yeah. It really did feel like we got the whole game before before it came out. And it's actually funny too, because they almost did the same with Remake, except not, right? They showed you everything of the game except for anything that would like lead into like, oh hey, we're also doing like this gigantic, maybe polarizing plot twist at the but we'll show everything else. Yeah.
To be fair, they, for how crazy 7 Remake went, they did manage to keep it relatively on the minimal.
Yeah.
Relatively, because I had no clue. Honestly, dude, when I played all of 7, I finished, the credits roll, I don't even know what just happened.
Yeah.
It took me about 4 or 5 months to actually really digest what happened, and now I really appreciate it.
Yeah, even people who had like the leaks and stuff and were trying to send me the leaks, and I was like, but I indulged in some of it too, and I was just like, huh. And then they were saying like, hey, some of this stuff might be, and I was just like, oh. At the time though, I was just like, well, we'll wait and see what happens. But for the most part, I don't know if they've gotten much better at showing off entire games before they come out. I understand though,
I'd like to think they've learned their lesson.
Yeah, I get why they do it though, because you want a new trailer all the time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I realized 16 was coming before it came out, mostly just because of their fiscal report. It's so predictable with Square Enix that if their titles are looking thin on the ground and they just want to keep shareholder interest, they will pump anything out of their booty. Right? No matter how conceptual it is or how far off it is, they will show a trailer purely to keep their numbers up. And I could see with their fiscal report, I was like, there is a huge area for a project. I was like, they have made so much money and there's this big empty gap. I think it was like a month later they announced 16. So I think you can predict Square Enix's movements based on a monthly and annual earnings report.
Oh yeah,
to be honest,
super easy. I mean,
to a T almost,
dude. And like what you were saying, they have not, like 16. The gap in between like 7R and 16 was the longest we've been without knowing what the next major Final Fantasy title is. In like a decade and a half, like maybe 2 decades. Like we've never gone a significant period of time and not known, like even though that wasn't even that long, it wasn't even like a full year, it was like a few months. But that was the longest. Yeah, that was the longest we went with not knowing like what was next. Because even going back as far as like FF9, like even then they announced 9, 10, and 11 at the same time.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, right, and
crazy.
Right. And so we've always known what's coming next.
I don't know if you agree, but I just so badly want Square Enix to make more mid-range games. Like their mid-range games, I love them.
I completely agree.
Type 0, like just get on that mid-range games, and that will happily cover fans between those long break periods. Get WoF 2 out. I don't know anything, but I don't know why. For Square Enix, it's either like AAA, all in, we're risking our entire company for this, or mobile game.
Yeah.
There's no route in between, which is surprising because they said they were really hype about going full into the Switch, and it doesn't seem like there's been a massive action from that side.
Not really. Just ports.
It says Switch, and there's like VR. Also, VR is going to be massive. Yeah. But other than Monsters of the Derp, have we even had anything for VR?
No. You know what's so funny?
Be a massive thing.
Speaking of like those 7R leaks back when they were happening, I remember like when people had discovered like Chatly and they saw like all these lines of text about VR, and they're like, oh my god, there's gonna be VR headset stuff, and then it was actually just Chatly. And I was like, oh my god, that's so like I could not have predicted that. I was like very sure, especially with Monster of the Deep. I was like, okay, they're gonna do VR stuff. Like, nah. That's just where you fight the summons. I was like, oh.
It is surprising they've not done something VR for the VR machine. I would have thought that maybe they'd have stuck
I did too.
A little something for that.
And I figured that if they were gonna do like some kind of like VR thing, it would have been with like 7R. Like it would have, you know, especially with Unreal Engine supporting VR and all that stuff. But
yeah.
No, but so we got a couple of questions from the chat. Let's take some. This is a funny one.
Ice fire.
This one's from my boy Slayer Santiago.
Slayer Santiago.
This is something I thought should have been in part 1. I swear to God, it should have been in part 1. Will we ever see Hot-Blooded Detective Joe in future FF7 games?
Hot-Blooded Detective Joe?
Yeah.
Who's that? Is that?
Do you know what that's
Cloud?
A reference to? Okay, so it's okay. So
is that Cloud's? Because I know Cloud was going to be a detective originally in New York.
So well, no. So what it originally it's around that area. Yeah. So originally the way 7 story was going to be told was by this detective named Detective Joe, and Sakaguchi wanted Detective Joe to like follow the protagonist around, and basically through the detective's work, they would, I guess you could almost compare it to like what they did with like Sae and like Persona 5. And like Detective Joe would have been trailing the protagonist, and that was something that was deleted. And I completely agree with Slayer Santiago here. I feel like if they were diving into like previous FF7 references, how fucking dope would it be for that like Sakaguchi reference to be there, where there's like a fucking like Detective Joe like side quest. And like I know only like 15 people would get that shit, but just to have it there would just be, that would make it for me, honestly.
I'm still so upset Aerith didn't say this guy are sick. I'm so disappointed.
Yeah. that would have just been a nice reference to have in there. Pichitima has a good question here. This one ties together both Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, so I think you already know where it's going. Thoughts on what Verum Rex means for Square Enix?
Money. Hopefully a new franchise. I mean, I guess that's what Verum Rex is going to be, trying to open some segue franchise that they're going to keep going with. I guess, but thing is, I say I'm super excited to see it, but surely whatever Verum Rex is going to end up being is going to be far and away detached from what Versus 13 would have ever been. I don't know how to treat Verum Rex in my head. I'm conceptually pickled, and we got the Master of Masters, like he was standing on the skyscraper, right? But
I think
a new playground for Nomura to go nuts in.
Yeah, I think people really want Verum Rex to be its own franchise, but the way they've introduced it, I feel extremely confident that it's going to be part of Kingdom Hearts, and that's going forward. That's what they're gonna do.
You think that's where it'll stay?
Unfortunately, that's not where I want it to stay. Like if we could get, you know, Versus reboot and get that whatever Versus was originally supposed to be, and you know, Noctis's hair is just white now, and all the characters have name changes, but for all intents and purposes it's still Versus 13. My curiosity could not say no to that. I couldn't. It would just be it's just too juicy to say no to.
It's Stella's return, right? It's like there's 2 chicks in Final Fantasy who were hard done by Stella and Etro, and if I see either of those characters in any capacity, I'm all aboard.
Okay, so here's
I love Nomura's Salt and Cage Tree.
I do.
Stars. That double commentary was so savage.
It really was. It really was, especially when you dig deeper into some of the things that he seemingly meant with, and it's just like, holy, like I can't believe that he managed to make Square seemingly pay for what we can interpret as outsiders as sort of a big FU, and make them spend millions of dollars creating this beautifully rendered visual works cutscene where he tells the people whose money he spent to basically get dead. Like I almost have to respect him for that because of how the tenacity of doing something like that, right? So here's a good one. When do you think 7R Part 2 is coming out?
before 16 for sure. I don't know. I would think at least end of this year, at least. Just because of when they've dropped episode Yuffie. So yeah, I don't know, because again, when 16 comes out, are we going to really get part 2 and 16 in 22? If so, that is such a beautiful year. But I don't know, the one thing I'm just, because I know Square Enix lay these things down in development when they're like, COVID, it has affected development, except for the games that are already in major development. They've been unaffected, and I can't work out how that can be the case. So I think it's whatever the COVID has caused for the timeline, but hopefully end of this year, guys.
Cute dog.
Cute dog. Hey! I haven't even played the Power of Doge yet. Go grab the Doge.
Yeah.
Wow!
Oh, so cute. So I'm thinking. I think that 16 will come 2022, and I'm thinking that Remake Part 2 will come 2023. Now there could be.
No!
I do
You
think.
could be right, dude.
I think that my logic is mostly that 16 has been in development longer. Granted, 16 is probably going to be a bigger game, volume of content wise than I imagine what Part 2 will be.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that 16's already been in development for 4 years, which is a lot longer than whatever 7R Part 2 has been in development. Granted, they do have assets, engine, and all that other stuff made in, so it's easier to see vice versa happening too. But I tend to think that the announced game is probably coming before the unannounced game. I'd like to think.
Sense in that light. I mean, the only thing that makes me think otherwise is because when you logistically think about Part 2, of course, we don't know where it will end. I really think Temple of the Ancients is about
That's
the
what
right
they should.
time.
That's what they should strive for. That's what they should strive for.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are saying like it won't even be Junon Crossing.
No.
What? But
Yeah.
even if we go to Temple, the main stop-off points, I mean, the next section is significantly Nibelheim, and the fact that we've seen most of the Nibelheim scenes, we've seen the bit with Tifa, the bit with Sephiroth, we've seen the whole village. Like, there's already so much work done that really all they'd have to do is get, I think, like Calm, Cosmo Canyon, Mount Coral, and the Golden Saucer.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem too much if Nibelheim's quite considerably done, but Fort Condor as well. I don't even think Fort Condor is going to be in it, to be honest.
So I
see it being in there.
At some point, they're going to have to cut something, unless they start moving at a faster rate than what they currently are.
Much faster.
All right, and that
much faster.
And we touched on this before we started the stream, but. And like, because we were talking about how in Ever Crisis, you mentioned that the first 3 chapters are Midgar, and so that would be like 30% of the story there, right?
Yeah.
But considering the volume of the world and the stuff that they want to add, and how they went about fleshing out characters and such in Part 1, if they were to do that in Part 2, and every subsequent part, every subsequent part, especially with the dungeon pacing too, because a lot of the dungeons in 7R were quite lengthy, and so to have that, and to also be adding stuff in, and then just trying to cover the original story.
Yeah.
Man. So even if they were just doing the original story,
it still blows my mind. The main reason I even started a YouTube channel was literally just because I was so hyped about 7 Remake, and I saw everyone just wailing in, oh my god, Square not doing it in like one part, doing this for a cash grab. This could easily fit into one part.
Yeah,
a game that was monumentally huge, a text-based descaled game of 97. You think that could be done in a 40-50 hour experience, AAA? No chance. I completely get Square doing it in this format. Just hope they don't make it painful.
Right. I will say, because you know that I was actually a huge proponent of the multi-game structure too. I thought it was a fine way to approach getting things out. And like I said, I'd rather have, at the end of the day, a trilogy of a game than have what we had with Final Fantasy XV, where there was stuff that we wanted and we could not get enough of what we wanted. I'd rather have too much of what I want than just not be able to have anything of what I want. So that part is fine. If this really is a sequel leaning and it's not necessarily a remake, in a lot of regards, I don't even see a need to actually go through every single little thing there. At that point, if it really is a sequel, you probably could get away with just cutting some stuff or some new stuff.
The thing is, you say that until you actually have to pick which bit would be cut, and you can damn disbelieve that any bit you pick is the reason why someone entirely loves that game.
Yeah, and well,
there's almost nothing you can subtract.
Well, a lot of those things though will sort of naturally be subtracted anyway because of the story going in a new direction. Some of those old plot points just won't be delivered the same way anymore because of the new stuff that they set up. So invariably,
if they go and speak to Bugenhagen and he just tells them about the stars and the planets and the stuff, after we've just broken down, like Bugenhagen's got so much more explaining to do.
Right.
He's got a lot to teach us on cosmology.
Right. And that's...
but everything's going to be different. Like Red 13, for example, the reason why Bugenhagen shows him Seto is because Red doesn't trust Cloud and the gang. He has no plans on leaving the village. Now he's absolutely committed to coming and defeating Sephiroth. So yeah, every character is just recontextualized, which I hope they stick to that. What I kind of hope doesn't happen is that we go into sort of part 2 and there's like a bit of an amnesia going on with all the characters.
I actually predicted that.
Yeah, because I mean, they did it intentionally with obviously Cloud finding out earlier that he was, in deep ground, seeing the experiments, and the ghost had to come and undo that. So they kind of teed up some reasons why they didn't like talk about a crazy thing that just happened. I hope the team just sit down, drink their goddamn tea, and have a chat about what has just happened, what's transpired.
I was going to actually ask, have you ever watched Steins Gate or played the visual novel?
Yes, I love Steins Gate.
Yeah, so yeah, okay, so that's
time travel logic.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spoil Steins Gate for anyone, but my whole theory with that is that either Cloud or Aerith or both are going to be the one with the reading Steiner. And for those who aren't familiar, basically what a reading Steiner is someone who can remember previous timelines after the timeline is shifted, right? And so normally whenever the timeline shifted, you only have memories of what your timeline was supposed to be leading up to that point. So I think that you're gonna have like 2 or 3 people. It's either gonna be Cloud, Aerith, and Sephiroth, or all 3, and they're gonna be the ones with the reading Steiners, and they're gonna remember, and everyone else will have like amnesia, and they don't remember fighting Fate and doing all that other stuff.
Absolutely. I think it's kind of been written into Hollow that way, like the way that Cloud's talking. It's like he's from very future tense. I'll never let you go. I'll never leave you again. No, I'll do things different. Yeah, I definitely think Cloud is going to get more and more of his memories as he comes. I still think the other characters will get their like intuitions because we can definitely see it. I go much further with some Remake. I genuinely believe that what we experienced in part 1 was a kind of non-reality. I personally frame it as, rather than being parallel timelines, I think that we're ascending from like depth, from the heart of the planet. It's like such a prevalent theme in FF7, that sort of there's distance between the mortal realm and the heart of the planet. And like Jesse's dad, he's in a coma. It kind of teed up that she has a theory on cosmology. He's near the heart of the planet. And yeah, that's what I think we're doing. We're going to ascend up through these like gradients that Sephiroth has infiltrated. And do you think there's a chance that Cloud is going to try to save Aerith, like he's sort of saying in Hollow, make an attempt on it that tricks us into thinking he's managed it?
Yeah, so
and Aerith has to commit to her own fate, Because Aerith also seems like she doesn't know whether she wants to be just a regular old girl who can, you know, be in love and have a normal life, or if she wants to do her Cetra duty. She seems...
So basically what I think is going to happen is that I think that Aerith is going to die. I think that they are definitely going to recreate the scene of Aerith's death for sure. Whether she...
Same location, same place...
It's too iconic to not.
Beats.
It's too iconic to not.
I think so.
But I don't
Unless
think she'll
they just get real
dead.
bold with it and they just have Cloud just commit to the decapitation.
Oh no.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, no. But
no.
I do think that I do think that they will I do think that she is not going to stay dead. And the primary reason I don't think she will stay dead is rooted in Zack.
Do you think so?
I think it'd be very weird to have Zack alive and not Aerith.
See, my logic sort of works backwards. I think we could get Death fake out with lots of characters, whether it's Biggs, whether it's Jesse, whether it's Zack, but then the continuity be restored. Like I was saying before the start of the stream, they'll return every character to the grave who needs to be returned to the grave. I think in terms of Aerith and Zack, they're like live stream guardians, that they'll return to that. But what are you thinking, that they'll all be there at the end? I just kind of don't want KH3, all the characters throwing frisbees to each other on the beach.
Right.
That's what I'm scared of, because like I said, the price of freedom is no longer steep when you just fucking...
And this is sort of goes back to what I talked about too, about sort of the cliches of modern Square Enix. And it's not just 7R. It goes back honestly as far as 10-2, the 13 trilogy. It goes into Kingdom Hearts. It's been Dawn of the Future, which is originally going to, you know, retcon most of the deaths and give us that happy. It's
big time.
Yeah, and so it's not like a. When I talk about my feelings toward them potentially doing that in Remake, you know, it's not like because they have opened up some different routes to take that I'm immediately thinking like, oh well, it's gonna suck. I'm just looking at the cliches that they're currently leaning on, and the ones that they've been leaning on for like the past 15 years, and kind of seeing it going that route because of how far they've leaned on those cliches, and how honestly kind of successful those cliches have been too. I guess a lot of people sort of resonate, or they enjoy those cliches for.
Well, this is what I think. I don't know if they could pull it off, but in FF7, as you know, as we're moving up to those key moments like Aerith's death, if we could get some like key player choice moments where we either get to sort of conform to the original event, so we conform to letting Aerith go or letting her die or any of the other significant moments, and then if our choices are logged and the more we deviate towards cliches versus what they authentically made, I don't know if they could then turn that into some bad or good ending, but I think that would be pretty sweet if we could like make a choice about Aerith's death and then realize our choice had no ultimate consequence, but the act of choosing itself determines the kind of path the story goes down. I don't know. I feel like there's something juicy in there they could.
I want Steins Gate more or less, where I think if you're going to go down that route where you save Aerith, maybe somebody else dies, whether that's like Barrett or Tifa or Sid. And like because you made that decision to save her, now somebody else dies, and you have like this moral decision on your hands to do it. But even then,
I love it. Yeah. And quickly, I gotta say it, because the idea that because I kind of think, you know, the VR segment where Sephiroth standing over Tifa and Barrett's body and the meteors coming down, I'm kind of like intrigued by that, because obviously the VR machine runs on Mako, and that means that memory is something from the live stream. So it kind of at least implies it could be Sephiroth manipulated, that could actually happen. And the idea that maybe we turn our back on like allowing Aerith to die, Cloud does fall in love. Holy's not coming, Livestream's not coming, Diva's dead, Barrett's dead, Cloud's in the middle, Meteor comes, Cloud absorbs all the souls of the Livestream, and then he has to make a choice on humanity. God Cloud theory, man.
That's pretty cool.
It'll be the perfect ending.
It's pretty cool.
Surely even someone who loves OG and hates the changes, surely you want a change to the ending? Because I always found FF7's ending pretty like weak and vague and over so quickly.
I would like it extended, but I actually really like where it like leaves off, because it's so provocative to me to just be like boom, and then that's it, and then you kind of just have to assess from there like what actually happened and kind of unpacked it. And that's the thing I thought that the original FF7 was so brilliant at, was knowing which things to leave mysterious.
Interpret.
And I think that Final Fantasy since original 7 has not known which things to leave.
Well, I kind of feel like with an interpretive ending, you could interpret it as bad or good or sad or happy.
Right.
Now it's kind of like, because they even did it with the Type 0. That Type 0 had that crazy cheesy ending with like all the characters alive, and there's some like chibi go-go anime power tune playing, and all off to like band practice and stuff. And I was like, I kind of get it, because I don't know, I'm the kind of person who, if I see a sad ending, my heart aches until I like read a fan fiction that has everyone living happy ever after.
Yeah, that's normal. That's normal. I think that's genuinely normal.
The kind of need for Square to actually try and create every good or bad ending to satisfy both. I don't know.
I think they got to stick their guns with whatever they've done now. Because a lot of people were like, a lot of people asked me like, would you prefer if they just went back to the original like this and pretended nothing happened? With that get you on board? I'm like, no, because then that would just be like, we had the and to do it, and then we just decided not to at the last moment because we got scared. So whatever they set up now, whether I like it or not, they have to go through with it. Otherwise, I would respect them.
I'm not going to accept
that
this game still does not have a chance of winning you over. I'm not accepting. Like plot ghosts disappear, Square Enix get their stuff together, the remake will win you over.
We'll see.
It will woo you.
If it does, it wouldn't be in the way I would have preferred it to, but we'll see. Here's a good one. We actually have Final Fantasy Union in the chat. Lazadar, however you pronounce your name. It's supposed to be like a combination of like Lauren and Daryl's name, I think. They asked, Lauren and I would, hey Daryl, would love
Is it the Lauren Daryl, the FF Union Lauren and Daryl?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Hey, beautiful people.
They say they would love to hear Jake's most outlandish theory.
Well, I've got one coming out after this stream. It's a 50-minute juicer. I was like, for this theory, I'm just going to blow their minds in 10-15 minutes. I'm just going to keep it nice and short, but it's nearly impossible. Probably the most outlandish is going to be the God Cloud theory. The idea that the reason Seth wants Cloud is because Cloud is the only vessel that hasn't failed. Kadaj vessel failed, Seth's OG body failed, the Northern Crater body failed. The idea that he wants Cloud and that Cloud absorbs the souls, and that we just see Nanaki 500 years later. He runs up onto the hill, he's looking over Midgar. Actually, I don't know, some sort of portal or access way to the life stream opens up, and humanity comes back onto the planet, and it's 500 years later. Midgar's obviously ruined, and they have to rebuild from the bottom. They rebuild Neo Midgar, and then we have like this final scene of like teenager Marlene. She's just walking, doing like what Aerith taught her, tending the garden, but it's like on a huge scale, biodiversity city. And Aerith just hears a little, Marlene just hears a little whisper in her ear, and it's the voice of the planet. Oh, it'd be such a good ending. Such a good ending. But the theory I've got right now, because that's more of just a hypothetical, the one I'm doing right now is that memory equals fantasy strength. in FF7 Remake, aka Cloud gets stronger, more memories he acquires. More of his own, more he bears witness to. I'll give you like a little few hints, because you know Cloud's power level gets crazy at the end. It's ridiculous. He's like teleporting around, he's doing some nut stuff. Well, he'd just been fighting the Whispers before that, and he was getting memory after memory. And there's a few areas they've kind of hinted that it seems Cloud gets stronger from it, like he's hugging Tifa, for example. Their like date scene. And she starts remembering that this is the second home Shinra taken from them. And like, yeah, she's lamenting their past. And then she just says that thing, Cloud, you're hurting me. So we're bracing. And I'm thinking, maybe by triggering Cloud's memory, it amps his strength up. And it kind of makes sense, being that Genova Cell, they are things that interact with memory. So
yeah,
I think that's why the framing of memory is so huge in Remake Remake Part 1, because it's the entire set of where the series goes from here on out.
It's that reading Steiner, man.
I love it. That reading Steiner.
It's that reading Steiner.
It's similar. Yeah. I'm tying it with like shamanism, because like Aerith, she gives off real like shaman roots vibes. She talks about, because I went to do ayahuasca about a year ago, so I met a few shamans, and everything they say is about plants being here to teach us. They're here to teach us, show us wisdom. And Aerith is no different. She has that scene with like Cloud and the flowers, and she's trying to encourage him to talk to them. And she says that whole thing that the plants, the flowers have something to teach us, and that we have to listen to them quickly. Yeah. Super fantasy shaman Aerith.
I love it. Sounds good to me, man. Someone asks, you don't think they'll end it? I'll let you take this one. You don't think they'll end it ambiguous like OG?
No.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I think this ending will be a lot more.
I like the ambiguous ending, and even I get loads of kickback from that, because I always talk about what it potentially means for like Aerith's character, especially when you think that her face showing up at the final shot, being that Katase genuinely, but he says, I believe that everyone at the end of FF7 dies. Nomura has a completely different view. Now, for two directors of the game have completely separate views on what happens to all of humanity in the game. Pretty massive. And to this day, people are like, that makes no sense. Of course, humanity didn't die. Advent Children exists. But this is where I think it could start getting trippy with people's headcanons now that Nomura said the compilation stuff isn't canonical. So we're going to start seeing things getting used in really strange ways that don't make sense. Like Weiss in Yuffie's episode. Yeah. That's not going to be the Weiss.
I would actually be some
weird like Chadley AI synaptic net drive beta thing. That's something entirely new.
I would actually be really happy if they took those compilation characters and instead of forcing them into the story, they were just kind of VR fights. Like I'm so cool with Genesis just being like a VR guy. Like if you're gonna include him, I feel like that's like the non-controversial way to say Genesis is in here, to make Genesis fans happy.
The VR section is you can do a lot of non-controversial stuff with it. I don't know. I personally want them to play a few like outer characters like Cisne. Definitely. The fact that the outer compilation characters they have decided to use are like the least known. Like who knows the kids all right? Like virtually no one. Even I've loved FF7 had a channel. Even I had to check up on what kids are all right.
I had no idea that book even existed until one of the characters like popped up. Let me there was actually so let's
is Hojo going in the network? I got comics.
Let's take some more questions here. When do you both think we will get Final Fantasy XVI reveal again from Final Fantasy Union? This year.
What was the question?
When are we going to see Final Fantasy XVI again? This year, I think.
See it again. Well, yeah. I mean, they did. Well,
yeah.
They did say we'd see something.
I think summer. This summer. Before Endwalker.
There was just a bit of FF16 news. I think they've changed the date to TBD just recently today.
Yeah.
on the PlayStation, which implies perhaps we could be getting something again soon. They changed the listing today, that's all I know.
They also asked, how excited are you both for the first soldier on a scale of 1 to 10?
So when I saw it, I was pretty hyped. I was like, yeah, this looks pretty cool. This looks pretty fun. Then I found out it was on mobile. I was like, okay, so the gameplay probably is going to be pretty limited. I knew Square were going to do this. I said I'd be more pissed if they did a roadmap like 15, just bringing out these mobile titles. The fact that episode Yuffie was there, like, cushioned it for me. I feel like that cushioned it to a point I could kind of be a little bit intrigued. Yeah, I'll play First Soldier. It's set at that really like pivotal 30-year prior to the start of the game point, which that's such a key section of the timeline. There's so much mystery in there, like Sephiroth and Rufus and how the program started. So when I first heard that, I was like, I'm in. But the fact it's going to be pretty like skimpy on story. I think they've pretty much admitted that. Like, there'll be a few references, but by and large, it's just Fortnite Final Fantasy. So I'm like a 6, man. About a 6, maybe a 5. Yeah. Still blue stacks, give it a go.
Yeah, I'm like right there in the middle.
Over it.
It's cool. I think multiplayer Final Fantasy is always interesting. I actually really enjoyed Comrades for Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
So I will definitely play the first soldier. I don't think. Wait, what?
Queue timers.
Oh yeah, the queue time. Yeah.
It's the only thing I can't stand with multiplayer for Squares. It's the queue timers and the matchmaking.
Yeah.
City NT, Comrades.
The Cydia NT. Holy crap, man! The time it took to like matchmake is like, I
Oh,
feel like 90% of what killed that game.
Yeah, big time.
Other than the other netcode issues.
Game,
that,
just
yeah.
that blaring orchestra. The music wasn't so. It was like,
yeah,
like punching in your ears. I was just like, and then you go in, and what killed Dissident for me was it wasn't best out of 3. The fact that you queue for that long, you go into one match, and like your teammates can literally throw in about 30 seconds.
Yeah. It's 3 minutes max. 3 minutes max for like a fight, I believe. Yeah, and so normally like the whole thing is over within like a minute or two, and then you're back in the queue for like another 15 or 20 minutes, and then you'll match with like the same guy like 15 times in a row. And part of that was the 3v3.
Or when it started becoming no people at all, and it was just NPCs.
Yeah, and it was just bots. But the worst thing about it was that was the 3v3, I think, because. Not the 3v3 inherently, but the fact that you had to find like a total of 6 people to play in an already like shrinking player base. And if they had like 1v1, the game could have survived for so much longer than needing like a team-based squadron to play. Which actually leads into the next question I picked here from the chat. From, again, Slayer Santiago. He asks, do you think Final Fantasy XVI will have a multiplayer component?
Oh, damn.
I wouldn't mind it if it came as a DLC later on.
Yeah, when it comes to DLC, I generally don't care what comes in the DLC as long as the game itself did everything it needed. Like, it was, for me, because 7 Remake Part 1 kind of did what I wanted to do. There's episode Yuffie. I'm not so keen for the DLCs. But for 15, there was so much I wanted for the story that every DLC I wanted it to be like answering those important points and answering those questions. It just frustrated me if they were just derpy, derpy DLCs. So as long as they're really cool, I'm cool.
So I almost feel like you got a whole bunch.
Huge.
I feel like multiplayer is almost the ideal DLC for Final Fantasy games, because it's right there between, on the Venn diagram, between, oh, it's important enough or interesting enough for me to actually want to check out, and then but it's not so crucial that it ruins the experience of the main game or the main story if I don't check it out. And so it's right there in the center between those two Venn diagrams, and that's like very ideal for me. So I would personally love to see something like a another version of Comrades, especially done by this team, done by Creative Business Unit 3, who really knows how to make multiplayer Final Fantasy content. I feel like they would really know what they were doing. I'm
totally cool with them doing it, as long as everything else is in place. Yeah,
and that's sort of the big thing about DLC stuff too, right? Is that nobody minds getting more story, more content. It's just that when we feel like the game comes out and it's clearly not in a completed state in terms of where the narrative is, it just it makes you salty. Yeah, it makes you salty to try to get that. Yeah.
But yeah, the main thing I don't really mind with the DLCs, because I've got to say, when Square have done DLCs, they've been naughty on some products, like 15 A New Empire. I will never forgive Square. Never forgive them for 15 A New Empire. But there have been DLCs that generally they do bring out these bits of content for free, and they sometimes they do. Obviously, sometimes they make us pay for it, but they do kind of dedicate. I think even with like Marvel Avengers recently, weren't they doing loads of like free updates and DLCs?
Yeah, they're trying so hard.
To doing like that, I can genuinely see when Square are trying to add stuff because they're passionately trying to make their game good. It's just the doing it after that is the problem, because with gamers, man, you've got one chance. If that main game ain't up to scratch, it's GG.
Fran Bell as versus 13 reboot win.
Azura, baby. Is any of this real anymore?
Let's
people still holding out for versus 13 reboot even with Azura. Surely not.
I think that a lot of people are seeing that as like a sign that versus 13 reboot could be out there.
Also happening. Oh my goodness. Are you sure? The main thing is I loved versus 13. It's just that I knew Square would never do anything to undermine its main title 15, and that's kind of why I'm even surprised Nomura's been able to get away with Yazura, to be honest. Like Verum Rex.
It's so weird that Square
it's just going to undermine 15 no matter which way you look at it.
Right. And for the fact that Square even greenlit, Verum Rex is like crazy on its own thing, but to sort of have like they published it as Final Fantasy Versus 13, and that was explicitly the title of the game, or Versus 15, and they tried to tell it as like this alternative story to Final Fantasy 15. You're right, it would undermine everything with Final Fantasy 15, and also it would make Final Fantasy 15 age worse, and it would just dig up old wounds that people. So Verum Rex is probably what's going to happen. It will probably be as close to the Versus 13 idea as he can possibly get it, but it will not be what Versus 13 was once was. I don't think anything ever will be Versus 13 again. It's just kind of going to be one of those games that's lost to.
Do you think it could have any FNC in it? Any of the FNC concepts?
I don't think
it's just that there's certain closures with that, with like Etro and Lindsay. We've like
it won't be called
3 games
that
in the Final Fantasy series. No, I just rename everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I kind of just I need another installment for the FNC series. Too many open-ended elements. I don't want to say too much for Type 0 spoilers, but when you've got like these gods that have been locked in this like perpetual play of like spirals for millions of years, and you finally just broke the veil of it at last, and the whole series is just ended now. It's like, come on, Lindsay, we need to take Lindsay down.
Yeah, and I think people are like, Baby Seal says here, it's like Nomura's version of the Snyder Cut, where everyone wants the Nomura cut. Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. Here's one, and I think I can answer this because I actually know what this person's talking about from Zombie Nug. Do you think the Blood update will be DLC or PS5 remake? So there was a huge misunderstanding with the ESRB updating integrates ESRB to have blood on it. It is not because the Genova blood is being changed. It's because Yuffie has an ability called Bloodbath, and it like literally summons like a blood effect, and that's why. So for any of you hoping that the Genova blood trail was being changed back to actually being a blood trail or like red blood, that's not happening. I regretfully.
So are you still excited for Integrate, bro? Are you still going to be playing it? Still going to mash that Yuffie DLC?
I'll wait for it to come to PC. I don't have a PS5 yet. I'm not going to rush to buy it. It's hard for me to justify, like back when I was making 7R content, it'd be very easy for me, or very justifiable for me to like rush out and buy a PS5, spend the $500, get the upgrade, do the $20 DLC, make content, right? Because I'd make it all back. Now since I don't really make 7R content anymore, it's harder for me to justify. I'll definitely play it when it comes to PC though.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's not something I would break my neck for necessarily, but when it comes to PC, and that's another thing too, is that I guess I do get a free upgrade, but I'd have to buy the DLC for $20, and then ultimately I just want the game for PC anyway, because modding the game is going to be what's most fun. So for me personally, it just makes sense.
Yeah, man, retro models in the 7 remake is going to be so fun to look at.
That's
fun.
Seeing like Block Cloud. Predictions for Endwalker.
Oh, it's so hard. I've really been racking my brain noodle with it, but I find what they do between each patch is like they climax these story elements and then they end them off in a way that I kind of thought where this was going. This is what I love about 14 in Yoshi P, is wherever I think this is going to be going, it usually goes grades above. I'm like, whoa, I did not see that coming. Their ability to supersede my imagination, I think, is why I fall in love with 14 so much versus 15, where I was kind of like, catch up to my imagination. Come on, like push it a little bit. Like, you're being a bit too realistic here. Like 14 just blows my mind, and I've got to the point now where I'm just like consuming it. Just that I can't even guess where the next Endwalkers. I guess the Hydaelyn Zodiac arc. I like the idea, even though some people are quite mixed on Xenos. I'd be interested to see what you think about him, because Elidibus and Emmett were so solid, and they were such good characters.
Yeah.
I felt my heart hurt for them, and I was like, wow. Like by the end, I was like, seeing these characters not as victims, but with so much more depth to them. Whereas Xenos is just sort of a mad dog. He's just sort of a crazy son of a bitch.
Yeah,
and maybe he's just teeing everything up to be this like great battle between him and Woll. I could see him trying to like take Zodiac's power and Woll like Hydaelyn's, and them having some galactic world-ending fight.
Yeah.
That's my best guess so far. And like Fan Daniel and his pink dragon, they'll sort of flit around and generally annoy us. I don't know. What do you think about Xenos, dude? Do you like him as a villain, or?
Okay,
people are so mixed. They're so mixed on that dude.
So here's how I feel about the guy. I actually really like Xenos, but it's hard to put my finger on why. Have you ever watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
2 episodes. There was a big fire in a barn. I think that's
all you see.
I haven't seen much.
Okay, so for chat who's watched JoJo's, Xenos is just like the Dio of
that was the asshole guy.
He's sort of the main villain. He's like the main villain of the series, and Dio, Xenos is Final Fantasy XIV's Dio, both in the sense where he just won't die. Also, the whole thing with like his grave too. Yeah, chat's like going off like, oh my god, that's actually a great. Yeah.
Grave.
Yeah, like the whole thing.
Grave.
Yeah.
Oh, his robbed grave. Yeah. He's in a different body. Yeah.
Yeah, because Dio basically also does the same thing too, where he dies and then like he's able to, Dio like steals another person's body basically and puts his head on. Yeah. Dio's fucking crazy. He puts his like head on top of another guy's like body. You should watch JoJo's. You'd love it.
Damn, I gotta watch that.
yeah. So like even after he's dead, he comes back, and then also just in the fact that they both kill their fathers. There's just so many comparisons that you can make between Dio and Xeno. Yeah. So Xenos is like
kills his dad, and he's just like, I'm doing it just cause.
Yeah.
Just cause, Dad. That was about it.
Yeah. So there is a lot of overlap between the two, and I think that's why I like.
But yeah, I think
he's balanced. He brings that like, oh okay, we have like these really well written, well composed villains like Emmett Selk and Olivus, and we also just got this one guy. Yeah, he's just crazy, and he just and he just wants to cause chaos. The only big theory though that I have for Endwalker is that Zodiac is the moon.
Zodiac is the moon.
Yeah, or is in the moon, in the same way that Hydaelyn's inside of the source or within the source.
Yeah. Is that already confirmed that he's jailed on the moon?
Is that already confirmed? I don't know. But I assume.
But yeah, I assume. I think we're gonna Bahama it up to the moon, and I love Final Fantasy IV, man. When I was sniffing out so much 4 in the Endwalker's trailer, I love it. It's my favorite old FF, and yeah, man, I hope we get to fight some pudding on the moon.
Okay, so my question actually, who do you think is gonna be the final boss?
Pudding is best.
Who do you think is gonna be the final boss for Endwalker?
Other than Fandango, Fandango and Xenos, we've got what's Mitron's part? Mitron, he's popped off. I don't know, man. I guess it's just I'm just thinking Xenos Zodiac. Not so much thinking about who the main villain's going to be. I'm just more who's going to die, because Square Enix, they've done too many fake outs now. Like they faked out with Yostola, they faked out with Thancred. Like they're starting to lose credibility with setting up death scenes. So I feel like they're going to punch the expansion early with a death. Whose it will be, I don't know. I think Thancred's most in the firing line.
Chat is mostly saying Hydaelyn will be the final boss.
Is that what they think? That Hydaelyn's going to be the one who's been brainwashing everyone, tempering people.
Yeah, I think that's gonna...
I kind of like the idea that it'll be like neither Hydaelyn nor Zodiac are good or bad, because they're just essentially manifestations of people's beliefs and ideologies,
right?
Like their hopes or their hopes for salvation. And I kind of think that if these beings are like elements of like the collective mindset, that neither can be inherently wrong, it just requires a resolution to it. And I feel like it could be Hydaelyn also has a resolution that's necessary. It could sort of unravel after we take down Zodiac. Like I think we could realize that once we remove Zodiac, Hydaelyn was created as a counterbalance to Zodiac, and if we take Zodiac out of the equation, that balance will fall apart. And I think we could realize that, and that we're gonna have to put down Hydaelyn as well.
Yeah, I love Final Fantasy XIV and the way primals work, and how everyone's just like beliefs in primals are what essentially give them power. That's just such a cool concept.
Such a good idea, and the way they've done summons. Honestly, the fact that when I heard icons in FF16, it's because we're gonna have these characters, especially kids. Like that's what I love with Type 0, like these innocents attached to like these great, crazy primals of power, and such an interesting interplay when you can. Because I guess that was with like Yotsu. That's what I love so much about Yotsu, is she had like that innocent nature, but she was tethered to something much, much darker. And then when that manifests into an actual icon. It's so beautiful what they can do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like incarnate summoning too, where they can just transform into the sun. Not all the time, but I think it's cool. Okay, can we get one more question from the chat? Let me see. Let's see what everyone else got. Because someone asked.
It'd be cool if we got more than one kind of like summon design as well. It blew my mind seeing. I don't know. I can't say things for. We get more than one Shiva in 14. That's all I'll say. And like the differences between the two, I love that. So that both ladies have very different ideologies and why they're doing it. And I don't know. I could see in FF16, like maybe because icon gets passed after one dies, so we get like more than one Ifrit, or if like Clive goes and helps Joshua because he's got like 2 fire icons in him, he's supposed to only have one. Like maybe Clive takes the Ifrit out of him so that the Phoenix's like regeneration isn't being suppressed, and then we see like Clive's version of the Phoenix. Ooh. It's so much to render those summons that I'm always like, if we saw more than 5 or 6, we're spoiled. I'd love to go back. So, like, I don't know how 7's going to keep up with all those summons, man.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Too many.
I hope that you can actually summon too, instead of just making them come out of your arms and your body. Although I assume that you won't just be able to summon like normally, and that summoning parts of the summon will probably be how it works for the most part. And I actually think that's cool, because that's how you're going to keep the summons relevant in gameplay all the time. Because, you know, summons, especially nowadays, are very special occasions. Like you pull out a summon only when something very cinematic is happening. For 15, it was only when you were like low on health and you were in like a certain environment. And like 7R, it's only when you're in boss fights. And even in 13, that TP gauge took a while to build up. You couldn't just like go into every fight with the summon. So I think that 16 probably is going to have summons are going to be more usable, because they have a way of using a small fraction of the summon's power rather than just being able to, you know, summon a god in the middle of the fight, right? And just annihilate everything. So and
it'd be so cool if, like, because I think, well, I guess or assume Clive is going and meeting these icons or these dominants and forming bonds with them. It'd be cool, not to say like go Persona style with it, but like if Clive does form these bonds, and maybe as those bonds deepen, because this is a way they could get around with like not having team members. So I don't mind the combat not having team members, as long as like these integral characters that I feel like we're bonding with, and maybe if his like use over the summon strengthens as his bond with them strengthens, like start busting out new elements of ice. But if I'm not skating around on Clive, like Shiva skates on, like Type Zero's Shiva, she was so elegant.
Type Zero's Shiva is one of my
ice skating. I want to be doing that with Clive in combat.
Type Zero Shiva is one of my favorites, honestly. I love the way, I love that ice skating motion. It's so good. Okay, so we got a couple questions that we can knock out fairly fast. I don't want to take up too much of your time, my man. So we'll get.
It's been great.
Yeah, we'll get these last few questions out.
Sorry, dude. I got into it. Just Schrodinger saying, why doesn't he pronounce it cleave? Cleave, isn't it? It's not. So for those, just a good old British name like Keith.
Yeah. Okay. So for those who did not know about that video where I pronounced it cleave, I just did not know, because that's what the meme is from. Because I made a video like when his name like first dropped, and I made a video, and I called him like,
you're the one who started the Cleave.
Yeah, I like so every time you see Cleave, it was me who started that. Just so you know, that was a Night Sky Prince original. I have not in fact heard of the actor Clive Owen, for all of you who are going to chime that in, and so I don't know why, but my brain just read it as like fucking Cleave.
That's so funny, dude.
It wouldn't be the first time that that Final Fantasy has had a name spelled one way and then pronounced an entirely different one. Titus, for example. Not like imagine how dumb you'd feel thinking that like, oh, it's Titus, and then Square Enix comes out and like Titus. And then you're just like, whoa, that's basically more or less how I felt with the Clive Cleave situation.
Do you start as an Aerith or an Eris, bro?
So, okay, we actually discussed this on a Just Chatting stream recently, but when I say Aerith's name, I say, and this is actually part of it, when I say Eris's name, I say Aerith. But when I say it in possessive form, I say Eris's normally. Because Aerith's is too hard to say.
Aerith's.
Yeah. I hate
so
it.
So it depends if it's singular or plural.
Yeah, so like if I have to say, oh, this is Aerith's flower, I'd rather say this is Eris's flower. But I will call her Aerith.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
Because I didn't realize, if you would have asked me before I started having to say her name 1,000 times a day for videos, I would have just said Aerith, of course, that's the canon name. But then after I had to start doing it, I'm like, saying Aerith apostrophe S.
Flows in my sentence.
Yeah, I'm like, having to say Aerith apostrophe S, like, strains my tongue so bad. Maybe all of you, you expert English speakers, that doesn't impact you much, but for me, I hate it. What do you think about the FF7 FF10 connection?
I personally like it. I think it makes sense. I don't want it to come out of the realm of semi-Easter egg-ish, semi-Najima's just crazy head canon. Because Najima, he definitely has like a fan fiction streak running through his writing. But to me, the reason why I like it, and I think better fits in 7 Remake now, is because they're expanding the concept of memory and how it works, how it interacts, and that it has become so far plane-ish in terms of how certain beings can like stay on the planet, what causes them to diffuse, what causes memory to stagnate. And it ties so thematically, obviously, with Cloud being an unreliable narrator the whole game, sort of trying to clear through his memories. So I think it fits, personally. I quite like.
Yeah. My response is, first of all, thank you, Frapper, for your $2 donation. He says, have been enjoying both of your content very much. Peasant brought me into Persona series and Prince into Final Fantasy series.
Persona.
Keep up the content, boys. I fucking love Persona 2, by the way.
Yeah,
big fan.
Oh god damn.
Yeah.
How many have you done? Have you done 4 or 5?
4 and 5. I have not done 3 yet. 3 is next on the agenda. I'm holding out hard. I have faith that Atlas is going to do a remaster. Okay, we got 2 more.
Thank you, bro.
Questions I wanted to take. One was pretty straightforward. I'm having trouble finding it again, but it's from Peachy Tima. Who's your favorite Final Fantasy waifu? This is important.
I mean, for me, it was always of the, I don't want to say the low tier waifus, but the one who first hit my heart. Everyone knows it. It was Jessie. It was Jessie from FF7.
Oh.
Holy hell. I would have fallen on my sword for that girl.
Yeah. You know what's weird,
I tried
though?
to. When I was young, I wanted all her dialogue. I literally, when I ran up the stairs, I didn't want to accept what was going to happen, so I ran up and down the stairs, fighting bosses for about mobs for about 2-3 hours, thinking maybe if I kill enough, like Jesse's salvation just needs blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
So I loved Jesse's character. I don't know why. I think it was just the first character. I was like, she's nice to me. But I don't know, Aerith now. I love Sarah from 13 too. That girl.
Sarah is
I know a lot of people don't, but Sarah, Aerith. I would say Rydia. I liked Rydia, but she did my boy Edge wrong. Wrong. She strung him along for 10 years, dude. 10 years. And basically persuaded him into helping her to raise this Maynard kid. Who's like basically a single dad who stayed celibate for 10 years.
Yeah.
And she still doesn't hook up with him.
He took that L, man. He got Yamcha.
Beatrix, solid.
For me, my top My top: Aerith, Yuna, and Y'shtola. And Yotsuyu,
like
obviously.
Those mystical staff gals.
Yotsuyu probably number one. Yeah, I have like a white mages, like in general, right? I guess. It's
likes
not...
that white meat.
Airships. Can you pilot them in 7R2 and 16? What's your thoughts?
Dude, I cannot wrap my head around what is going to be happening with the world format in FF7 Remake. Like, any notion. Again, we're talking about particularly where they've put themselves in terms of story, in terms of how much they've... I don't want them to bloat sections out anymore, but they've already opened the narrative floodgates. And for them to achieve the rest of the story, plus this new narrative floodgate, plus some kind of open world structure on top of it, can't imagine it. Even like wide linear environments, which seems like the most realistic to me, sort of similar to like 13.2's world format. Even that's going to be a stretch. So
yeah,
the idea that they could do that and then drop us, because that's the thing, FF7 is largely a linear experience. It drives me absolutely insane when people like go nuts on FF13 for not being open world. Most old Final Fantasies were not open world. 10 wasn't open world, 9 wasn't open world, 8 wasn't. They were just linear corridors that at the end you're allowed to have this little thing called an airship and fly over the map. It felt like open world, and that was what was really cleverly deceiving about the top-down map. What they're going to do now, I have no idea, but I'm hoping that whatever 16 does just tries to do it a bit more minimalistically than 15, because I think 15 proved there's no point having this huge trawling mass of landscape if it's not packed with beautiful, cool. And I kind of never really like the matte grays, like the earthy colors. I like that Final Fantasy pop. So I might be the only person who loved FF13's corridors.
Yeah.
I loved them. I love going down them, all these like beautiful crystal I feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland right now. It feels it feels magical. So I just can't see how they're going to do it and keep it so that the story stays top tier.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
7R2.
What do you think, man?
7R2. I think I don't think it will have I don't think it'll have airships, because in order to have airships like they did in Final Fantasy XV, where the Regalia Type F seamlessly flies over the world, what you have to do is build like a persistent world map in which everything in the game takes place on that map. And it's very expensive to build.
So intense.
Yeah, it takes a lot of it takes some pretty state-of-the-art technology and talented people to work on it. It's not something that Square Enix really has much experience with working on either, especially the team in particular that's working on it, which is formerly known as Business Division 1. Now they're Creative Business Units. So CBU 1 does not really... that's not their strength, is creating open world games. Before this, they made the 13 trilogy, and before that, most of the key staff was working on like Final Fantasy X. The team is not an open world team. It's not what they do. I think that it probably would be a worse game if they did try to make it open world, just because the team itself does not have that type of experience. They've never done something like that.
I think it's unnecessary, really. I don't know what they can do instead, and I've like mulled over it. What if they just go like real derpy with it? Just give us some like stylized top down like map that we can go into combat in when we travel across, but I don't know if it would just look jarring with like the rest of the game. I don't know. 7 Remake gets away with some of its more wacky aspects. Going forward, you're going to have Red in a freaking sailor suit. So it does have the capacity for that weirdness. But I would even just like things, say if when we're going from Calm to Midgar, or Midgar to Calm, if we just had like little scenes along the road, like little
Yeah.
linear
Yeah.
grass corridors, and we
Yeah.
have scenes of the characters like stopped off, like having a little funny moment, kind of like, I don't want to fool FF15 Eyes on the Road journey, but I liked what they set up there with like the characters going through this world and just having these little organic interactions. So I don't know, I want to see the characters like walking through calm. Barrett's like, he's tired as hell, their stomach stank, and they spot a river, and they had this whole scene of who's going to go bathe in the river before. I don't know. Maybe I just want a bathhouse scene.
I do think for Final Fantasy XVI, however, I do think that there is a chance of it having an open world, because normally with the next mainline Final Fantasy, that's where they invest on their tech and their engine, and that's where they have that's where they tend to put the most money and the most energy at. So I could see 16 maybe having it, and I can also see 16 probably being like a true open world game. I just hope that the open world itself has a lot more meaningful and valuable content than what 15 had. I think we all hope that.
Or it just goes similar to most of the formats, which is, we have those linear sections, and then we get the open part. Obviously FF13. It had Pulse and the open world section. It just came too late in the game, so maybe we'll just switch between that. Wide linear narrow corridors with open world sections.
That's what I'm generally thinking too, honestly. Yeah. I'll get this last one from Hassan Osman. He asked, thank you for the 100 bits. Is you think well, this was kind of self-explanatory. I think you think Bugenhagen is going to have a big role in 7R. I think most people think that he's going to have probably one of the most pivotal roles. Actually,
he's got some stuff to explain on Bugen.
Yeah, I think he's going to have like the most pivotal of pivotal roles. So
yeah, and I want to see the more grounded side of Bugenhagen. Like, he's a tough old dude he's rubbed shoulders with President Shinra. I think he even met like Cisne and the Turks. Like, I think he even worked at Shinra at one point. I don't know, but there's so much Bugenhagen.
I'll tell you this much: you won't get all the answers from him though, and the reason is the pacing of the game. They're not
get the answers no matter what.
they're not going to reveal everything right there. There has to be like that's like the midway point answers, but you're not going to get the final game answers there, because the final game answers have to come at the end. That's just the way. That's just how like the narrative structure just has to work. So the real question is where the rest of the answers are going to come from.
But then, does anyone think Bugenhagen has any regrets? Because this has been a big part of my dream theory, is that there's a lot of idealistic weird scenarios, and like episode Yuffie sort of double confirmed it for me, is that all the characters are kind of doing things that they originally wanted to do in OG but couldn't. So little things like Kate Sith appearing on top of the pillar as it's coming down. That was an addition that I feel reflected Reeves' extra intensity of not wanting the pillar collapse, or like Barrett getting his dream of almost getting President Shinra to go on like live television and admit his wrongs. And now we've got Yuffie who's saying she's in this official capacity and she can come and bring the wrath of Wutai, and it does seem like she might actually legit have like this official position. It seems like all the characters are, it's like everything in OG has happened. And again, like the Stein's memory thing, it's like their intuitions are trying to force them to not make the mistakes, but act on the desires they had from OG. You get me?
Right, exactly.
And I think that's why, like, even Tifa, like when she grabs Cloud, stops him from falling, they even said in the Ultimate that was a response to her regret of having Cloud fall. So it's like in these scenarios, these characters get to live a double life. They don't know it, but instinctually they're being pushed towards.
And I think
like,
that's,
maybe Bugenhagen has that.
Right. I think that's the best way they could play it going forward, is not necessarily making it about destiny anymore going forward, but making it more about overcoming regret or dealing with regret. And I think that'd be it.
Just the characters actually having an opportunity to evolve beyond their OG selves. I want to see these characters go next level. And the main thing why I'm not so bothered about the big changes, even though I'm scared of whether they actually managed to pull it all together in a succinct and coherent way, is I respect Square Enix for the trying of it, at least. I know some people wanted them to play it safe, but you have got to have huge balls to do what Square Enix are doing with 7. Like,
yeah,
balls.
Yeah. And even
I suppose on one level, I can at least respect that.
And I feel that same way too. If they wanted to get people talking, they've definitely have managed to do that. Whether they continue to keep that talk positive, because right now it's all been overwhelmingly positive, except for me and my critiques, of course.
There's plenty, honestly. There's plenty of people.
Yeah, but yeah, I shouldn't downsize the number of people that feel my way. In fact, as I've kind of stopped doing remake content, I have had a number of people in my position or felt the same way I do kind of reach out to me and say, hey, I actually feel the way you felt. And I think that's sort of the conundrum that Square is going to find themselves into, is that you got one group of people who are like, I'm so excited about Zack surviving. You got this other group of people who are like, if Zack survives, the whole fucking game is ruined for me.
Ruined.
Well, now imagine you're Square Enix. What do you do?
I did a video. I was like, are we going to pretend that FF7 hasn't been completely broken, like, from this point on? Because I was talking about all these like new places or areas the plot could go, and some people are like, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to change much from the original. I don't know why you keep coming up with these crazy ideas, deviating from the original. I'm like, it's not me deviating. The floodgates are already open. Like, already happened. Yeah. And I'm more scared now about if Square tried to put the lid back on it, because I know what Square Enix can be. They can see some fickle like complaints online. They can actually really take it to heart. I've seen games where they've like deviated.
And people say that they don't listen to that stuff. People are saying. They really do. Maybe too much.
They do, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, too much. Exactly. I prefer the Square Enix where it's just a little group of mad geniuses who just sort of sat in their offices, disconnected from the rest of the world, coming up with these insane, beautiful plots. Okay,
this will be like the final question. I promise. This is the absolute
final
the final question.
I'll strap in. I'm ready.
Okay. What is, in you guys' opinion, the most I thought it was, what is your most divisive FF opinion, but it's actually what opinions, or what is, in your opinion, the most divisive FF game?
Oh, the most divisive FF game. Okay. I was going to say, because if it was what is your most divisive... is that the right word? Divisive? It sounds so weird. Divisive?
I feel like divisive... Actually, let's tweak the question, because I feel like divisive... divisive is just like a matter of like 13 or like 15, because those are like maybe 8. Yeah. It's kind of like the same routine ones. Actually, I think it's more interesting to ask, what's your most divisive FF opinion? I think that's why my brain read it like that. It's
just my flower FF opinion. It's that Cecil Harvey he's a bloody gaslighter. He's a hero, a non-hero who basically piggybacks all of Kane's like achievements. He's a total hypocrite. He's useless. Cecil Harvey can go do one. I don't hate him that much, but Cecil was useless at times. Like, literally, the crystal got stolen by a hand. Slowly crawled past him. He did nothing. I'm like, come on, Cecil.
I'm so excited for FF Warlord to be an Endwalker. You're making me giddy on it. Go on.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, man, I'm so hyped for the 4 stuff they might be bringing. But in terms of games, it's got to be 8 or 13. Those are the Marmite titles. Is that? I don't know. I feel like 13 kind of went the way of 8, and it's the case that when both those games came out, it was like 50-50. and you heard the raging debates between the two, but eventually, like it's kind of like with 13, the haters just sort of lose steam. And only the people who are like passionate and in love with it sort of remain. So now whenever I hear about 8, people freaking love it. Like everyone thinks it was absolutely the best, like the best FF that came. So I feel like 13's gone that way as well. Like it's now acceptable to talk about 13. Like you'll get someone tell you that you must be blind and tasteless.
Yeah, for sure.
Jesus, dude, you like 13.
So I guess for me, like the most divisive games are 8 and 13, almost objectively. That being said, I do think there is still potential for 7R to be one of the most divisive, if not the most divisive games going forward, depending on which way they do take the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've got childhood nostalgia on the line, man, and that is a powerful and dangerous force.
Yeah.
Wow.
As far as my most divisive opinions, I think most of you guys already know them because Twitter has already ripped me a new one several times for those opinions.
Yes. Let's go.
But generally, it's mostly the stuff that I feel with 7R and the modern series, and just where it's excluding 14, of course, and where it just has not hit on the right chords that I think it should be. I guess that's not a divisive opinion overall per se. I think that's the general consensus, but how deep I think it goes, or how much further I think the rabbit hole goes, is a lot deeper than I think most people probably initially think.
Yeah. So it's cool though, man. It's respect you for staying honest to the opinion, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that so much.
Especially if you started this channel. I get what it's like. You're supposed to be the Final Fantasy guy. The temptation to just be inauthentic and bullshit it. Oh god, I might be revealing what I'm secretly doing. And to be completely brutally honest with your point of view is not easy. So
and that's the thing though too, is that generally speaking, I could have just lied and just kept getting views and money. It would have been incredibly easy for me to do. No one would have ever really knew that I felt that way, and I could have just lied the whole time and kept profiting on it. And you know, honestly, sometimes I look at my bank and I'm like, fuck, maybe I should. Honestly, it felt more right for me to be authentic with how I felt than to
for sure, dude.
than to say no, because the Gargs in the chat, we all know you're going to trash 700 give views. No. And I could have did that too, right? I could have did the rage marketing angle too, where I just made like videos about Square cheated us. Fuck that. Yeah. No, I didn't want to do that either.
People love those kind of vids. Yeah, honestly, some of my biggest vids are when I do the rants and the rages. People love rage
People
videos.
They do.
Lean into it.
They do, and yeah, I could have did that too. And I'm not saying that at some point in time I won't make like a video about like how I feel about 7R, but it will be after everything is out. Yeah, and then I will sort of come back to that point and be like, okay, here's what I was thinking like the whole time, right? Where I was not pushing out that content, and what you guys. NSP's angry voice is kind of hot. Thank you, Tashido. Yeah, like right now, I just feel like the more we kind of just, or at least the more I talk about it, the more it's just kind of a moot point, because we really don't know what's happening.
Yeah. I suppose you've probably seen it a lot lately, but so maybe I'm wrong in this, but I used to get frustrated when I started the channel, because it is crazy how something like a game, which is ultimately an interpretive, subjective art form, just how locked into battle people were. I mean, I remember when I started my Facebook group, it was all the conversations whether about which character's better, which game's better, people getting into explosive arguments. I don't see it as much now, so I don't know if that's just my subjective lens, but I think people are slowly getting older and not being such shitlords, but I'm sure you're seeing a completely other side to it.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing that as people get older, a lot of times they get more divisive on or believe more firmly on what they think these titles should be. And Final Fantasy is such a age diverse game where it's played by people who are still in their teens right now, all the way to people who are who are in their like 40s and 50s who played fucking Final Fantasy 1 when it came out. And so there's just this huge question with this series of what do you do with the fact that they're like 16, 17-year-olds who are playing like Final Fantasy 15 and love it, and then you have someone like me who's 29 going on 30 and who grew up with the series and is feeling that one way. And so and part of me also thinks that maybe that's why 16 and 7 are being sort of marketed the way that they are, is saying that like, hey, here's 16 for you 30 plus year olds who grew up with Final Fantasy, and this is your brutal dark Final Fantasy that is going to appeal to you and your audience. And then we have 7R, which we're keeping rated teen, and so this is for like the 18 to 24 year old market. And they're gonna like that too, but then the older audience can still kind of latch onto it too, because it's still Final Fantasy VII that they grew up with. And I think that's what they're going for.
But I mean, are we gonna pretend that age rating means anything? Like, it certainly don't mean anything now. When I started gaming, I was like 11 or something. I started with Resident Evil. Like, it didn't mean much back then. Now, fucking.
Yeah, actually, I think I probably play like more T-rated games now than I did as a kid, because now like as a kid, you know, like firing up some Grand Theft Auto or something with my brother, you know.
Dude, when I was younger, if I'd have looked at World of Final Fantasy, I would have laughed out of the room. I would have said, you have to be like a little 11-year-old girl to play a game like that. I absolutely love it.
It's so weird how those sensibilities like dial back the other direction, like as you get older. You start to realize that like all the stuff you like thought was cool just really does not matter that much.
And now you're just like, anything that makes me feel good, anything, I'll take it.
If I can get like a little smidgen of serotonin going,
I'll take it.
It's some good shit. Yeah. Like, let's go.
Has anyone else in the chat found that as you've got older, have you gone more anime-ish, less anime-ish? Like the chibi and the kawaii.
Yeah.
No, how do you watch much anime? Because that level of chibi, it takes some sort of adapting.
Oh yeah. I actually watch a ton of anime, and it's so weird because I would not even describe myself as like an anime fan, but I've watched like hundreds. Curious Joy, you're 34. Are you serious? What the?
34, and I can't with chibi. Like, dude, that's the reason I didn't play FF9. For years, I didn't play 9 because I was like, these characters, they look all weird. They don't have human proportions. This is so. I didn't understand the concept of chibi in the slightest.
Don't humans have proportions? Like, you weren't just playing with spiky haired Legos with big swords. Yeah, that's another thing too, is that people kind of go after FF9's art style and like model style, even though like if you look at Final Fantasy VII, it's like literally Legos.
It's got like a steampunk sort of aspect. It's got some like black dude with huge biceps and a gun arm, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's different. 9, we've got like a rat and a black mage. And
oh man, okay.
So I love 9.
I think we will wrap things up here. I don't want to take up too much of Mr. Peasant's time. He has a brand new theory video coming out today, right?
I'll drop it after this.
Oh man, what's this theory about? Just what's the TLDR?
Title is Memory Shamanism. Memory Shamanism. You guys better be prepared for that. Esoteric as fuck. It will be fan belt. I'm going to be talking about my trip to Peru. I'm going to be explaining in detail my trip, things I saw.
You went to Peru?
Flitted around. Yeah, I went to Peru to do ayahuasca with some shamans. It was my first time.
Oh, that sounds so cool.
My twin, El Ginge, my sister. Yeah, we all went, like 4 of us.
Oh, okay, and that's
One of those experiences I've not spoken about it since, but fantasy meets reality, man.
Oh man, and that's that. So that's what inspired this this video, right? Is you going there?
Coming away from it, I was like, whoa, I'm looking at 7 in a whole different light. And that's the main thing with these theories is I used to be really bad in the old days with 15, because I used to be like, oh, this is this confirmed. Like there was memes of me like, confirmed.
Dude, you know what though?
Because I was so excited and I was like, oh my God, this is definitely it. Now I try to use words like, I think this could mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
This reminds me of, and just be a bit more. I'm not trying to say exactly what is happening in the 7 remake or what will happen. I just want to suggest, give a new lens for people.
Yeah, because honestly, that's gotten me into trouble too.
Yeah.
All right, I think we are going to rate my friend Mercedes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can follow Final Fantasy Peasant here. There's a link in the description below where
that silver play button.
Yeah. We are both very close to that silver play button right now, and we both really want it. So
if NSP beats me, if he beats me to 100k, I'll do the spiciest chili challenge in the world.
You heard it here,
subs are gonna skyrocket now.
You heard here
first. They're gonna skyrocket.
Go get this man to 100k. He deserves it. He carried Final Fantasy 15 on its back when Square wasn't giving us anything. This man was pumping out theory videos at the time, and I was just like, man, like Pez is basically writing the game now, and I'm here for the shit. So,
dude, when you came into the show, I think I watched like 4 or 5, because I used to do the news vids of all the latest news updates for Final Fantasy. And the second your stuff came out and you were hitting all the deeper parts of the research, you were finding stuff, you were putting it in coherent, consistent, like videos. I was like, I don't even need to do news coverage. I'll just do my crazy theories. Like,
oh man,
you made me ditch doing news coverage. No. Like, this guy's got it covered. I come to you for my news. I don't need to do anything else.
No, dude, I still love your news videos. Honestly, even when you were putting them out and I did them, I would like literally like put mine out and then go watch yours. So
I did the same. Because I did the same, except I would do mine, watch yours, and then just look at mine and go.
Nonsense. What are these lies?
It's been awesome being on.
All right.
Awesome. I haven't done a podcast in so long.
Oh man,
I've enjoyed this, man.
Yeah, this is one of the best chats I've had in a minute, dude. This is awesome. Thank you so much, man.